I would just love to start by having you share a little bit with us about who you are and your relationship to BDSM and how it connects to your facilitation.
Amazing. Okay. So I started off initially actually as a holistic health coach, believe it or not. Like I forget that was where the journey all started. And I've now been in the coaching world about 11 years. But even before that, I started facilitating sensual movement. So a very nonlinear, intuitive feminine movement that was really focused on erotic expression. So over the years, as I dove deeper and deeper into my particular passion and expertise in coaching, I ended up in this world of embodiment and intimacy. And then in my personal life, I also have always just kind of been a kinky gal, and I'd say ever since I can remember, I've been pretty kinky. And so at some point, what started to happen was all of the worlds merged. So there was the sensual movement facilitation that I continued to do both in my coaching practice and also on the side a lot more in person at different studios. And then also the training that I started to receive in the BDSM and kink world that gave me this new lens, because instead of just doing it like for fun on the side in my own personal life, I started to really zoom out and see the energetics of BDSM and kink. And so at some point, the sensual movement, the coaching, the embodiment, and then the BDSM all kind of wove in together to this beautiful place now where I'm starting to just see the parallels in all of these different modalities and how it's all about the energetics at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up into geeking out a little bit on this world.
So it's still like this. You're still more of a sensual embodiment facilitator, and kink and BDSM are still mostly kind of your personal thing that is now starting to weave into your work?
I would say in the last few years, it's asking to become the focus. And so I'm in this place where now I've been chewing and really digesting all of these different ahas that I'm having and starting to teach these concepts because I'm finding that it's a very interesting frame that opens up the eyes of facilitators, especially not just kinky ones, but, those who are a little bit more into this world are like, oh, wow, I can really see the parallels here. And the reason why I think that's so powerful is because we are such like somatic creatures that when we can feel it in our bodies once, twice, 3 times, it just kind of imprints in a way that helps us then go out and be that embodiment in the world. And so when you yourself are experiencing certain BDSM and kink practices, you then can go out into the world of facilitation and go, oh, hold on, let me remember that time when I felt this way. Oh, how can I translate that into my facilitation, my holding, my doming the space essentially now.
Super. So before we dive in more, I would love for us and for me to invite you to just share a little bit about what BDSM and kink are. They're really misunderstood. It's a really misunderstood. And I can even speak from my own self. I remember one of the first workshops I went to, where it was like a play party format and people like got into the center of the circle and shared their desires. And a bunch of people were sharing that they wanted to be spanked or they wanted like power play. And I was just like, I came for cuddles and sensuality. Like, what's going on here? And then by the end of the night, I was kind of like, wait a second, like something, and in that first party, that first experience workshop, you had to say something you really wanted and something you didn't want.
Mm.
And I said, I do not want any pain. Like, I don't, nothing with pain. Like, don't even come near me with that. My second time going back, my desire was I wanted to leave with marks. So
Amazing.
so something really shifted in that. Like, I was one of those people that was like, this is crazy and weird. And what are you doing? And that's totally not my kink to like, tell me everything.
Yeah.
So I would love, and I love helping people demystify a little bit some of the misconceptions. So, but I would love to hear from you, what BDSM and kink are and what it's really about.
Yeah, I think there's this common misconception, and I can understand why, right? That it's like, okay, it's all in a dungeon and you're hanging upside down or you're like mummified in latex. And it's just these really extreme fetish versions of kink and BDSM. And the truth is that when you strip it down, when you pull away all the fun toys and accessories and outfits and whatnot, it really is about power. I would say that the most dominant partner that I've ever played with is someone who does not identify as being involved in BDSM in any shape or form, who never once used any particular accessory or toy, and who it really showed up in a certain embodied state that then created an experience in me. And so I think this is where it starts. It starts in the energetics. It starts in the psychological. It starts in this power play and also in this negotiation of power where everyone is winning. And this is another misconception, is when you look at it from the outside in, if you just kind of walk by a scene happening, you might be like, what on earth? That does not seem like a win-win situation. But a really well created and curated experience and scene is actually one where I would say is a win-win-win. So everyone is getting their needs met, and together in the scene, in this experience that the dom and the sub are having, you're actually creating a loving energy or a healing energy, a cathartic energy that's also a win for the collective. Now, that's not usually how people are thinking about it at all, but we'll dive into this a little bit more, and hopefully by the end of the episode, people are understanding why I would speak to it that way.
What is it giving you that people maybe don't see beyond the kinky black leather whips and chains outer appeal?
I would say that it's so much about healing your relationship to power and control. And that's on both ends of the spectrum. So whether you are taking on the role of domination or submission. So I'll give a very granular example based on my own experiences. So I myself am a recovering control freak. And submission has been such a beautiful somatic practice of letting go of the physical clenching that often I walk around or have been in the past walking around with, and also just the trust in the leadership of another force, a benevolent force that is taking me somewhere that I might not know. It is changing the way I relate to uncertainty. And it's truly just a spiritual practice of surrender. And then on the flip side, when you're dominating, there's such a beautiful healing aspect, especially for those who've been scared of their power, to reestablish a new relationship to power that's not about control. That's actually loving leadership is kind of how I see it. And I think I've seen so many insanely gorgeous, like I am moved to tears when I watch certain scenes. And of course, if I'm in certain scenes, then I might be moved to tears in that as well. But where I see someone shifting right before my eyes, their they taste a part of their identity that they have either dismissed, closeted, decided was bad, whether that be in the realm of surrender or domination.
And maybe it would be helpful for some people who are just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What is a scene?
Yes, beautiful. So a scene is something that when you're partnering up as a dom and a sub, what happens is you come together and you decide, okay, for a period of time, could be 30 minutes, it could be hours, you guys decide, we are going to enact a scene where essentially we are playing the role of dom and sub. And when we enter this container, what we are essentially doing is we are fully going into the extreme spectrum of domination or submission. Now, before you go into that, of course, there is negotiation that happens. There are agreements that are set, and we'll dive into the details of that, I'm sure, later. But essentially, you set up a container with an agreement and with an intention. So usually when you're setting up a scene, the way that I've been trained is the submissive always comes in with a particular desire. Often that might be, sometimes it's just play, right? But often it can also be, hey, there's this piece of me that I haven't been able to touch yet, and I really would like to go there. Or there's this new edge that I haven't played with that I would like to, and with impact or sensation or psychological play, right? So an identity play. Like there's a lot of different areas you can go into, but essentially you go in and as the sub, you speak a desire. Now the dom will come in and their role is to, within the boundaries you've set and agreed on, to execute some kind of scene. So this is where it gets really fun and creative, to really support the desire of the submissive. And even this in itself is misunderstood, right, by people who haven't gone through this process, where it's like, oh, okay, well, one person is just doing whatever the other person says they should do. And it's like, oh no, it's always in support. The leadership is always loving and in support of the desires that were set up at the beginning, which are usually by the submissive or as a team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you go in, you move through the scene at any point during the scene. Obviously, there's safe words, or well, it's one safe word that you agree on. And so you can pause, renegotiate, give feedback, or you can also just stop the scene completely if you hit an edge and you're like, or you just feel like I'm complete. And so either the time will end the scene or someone calls the safe word or the pause, and then at that point, it's complete. So that's basically how a scene, and sometimes the scene is 3 minutes.
And what was the moment for you when like it dropped and you were like, there's a direct connection here from BDSM relationship to facilitation and group work and the way that I'm facilitating my participants?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the most humbling moment that I can remember was the first time I went into an official BDSM training space, and I was doing just a little partner exercise with a man who was about twice my size, and I had to dom him, and I had to tie rope around him. And because I was pretty new, I didn't really play with rope, and I'm usually a submissive in my personal life, I was completely like fish out of water. And I noticed from the first moment I started doing whatever we were asked to do, that with the rope, that I hesitated. And there was, the moment I hesitated, I felt the entire field drop. And something clicked for me in that moment where I went, oh, containment and the energy that you show up with and confidently leading is everything here. Because being on the flip side, it's very easy to be like, oh, I felt them drop me for a moment, or, you can get bratty about it. And being on the other side, I was like, oh my God, this is so difficult. And it is all about the energetics and not at all about what tying I'm doing right now. And so something for me there clicked with how we hold space as facilitators. And then the wheels started churning and everything, once you kind of put the frame on and you're like, all I see is that. And for me, I think the training that I went through, the particular, I guess, lineage of BDSM, I guess we can say that nowadays, that I'm trained in very much focuses on containment, and how containment is actually 90% of all the work that you do when you're in the dominant role. And so I started to see the entire everything in the world as, is there enough containment or not?
Including your spaces.
Including my spaces, very much so.
So let's talk about what containment is and what that looks like. Like, what have been some practical, physical things that you've shifted in the way that you hold space?
Yeah. So containment itself is the process of creating a permission field, a safe container, a somatic experience of being grounded and held. So literally, when you think about weighted blanket, when you think about someone hugging you, just exactly the right firmness that you like, right? And the feeling of being burritoed in your own bed, the way a cat will just find its way into the tiniest little box because it feels like, oh, that's where I can exhale. That's containment. And most of the time, what happens is people get really excited with all the fancy, oh, look, I can do all these crazy rope ties, and look at me with my 16 different floggers and my outfit. And they get really engrossed in that piece, which is so fun. But that actually is penetration. So the way that I was taught this by my teacher, Omar Pani, is essentially that there are two key pillars. There's containment, which is all about down regulating the nervous system, right? So we're coming down, we're slowing down, we're feeling held. We're in that parasympathetic, like all's good. Then it's really when you're fully in that space that you actually, it feels funny, right? But that's when you can upregulate your nervous system with sensation, with impact, with pain, whatever it is for you that is going to upregulate you. Might be the psychological identity play that upregulates you because you're like, fuck, that's triggering, right? But you can't go in with penetrative energy, with upregulating energy, if you haven't first found that place of safety, which is a result of a million things, right? It's the agreements that you put in place. It's the holding, the physical holding. When someone just grabs the back of my neck and just grounds me, my shoulders, pushes them down a little bit. Like I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here. Okay, I'm here. Okay, I'm really here, right? And you're just kind of shh. And then they're like, okay, and then they like do something, pull my hair a little. I'm like, whoo, right? That's the upregulating. So when you look at everything through the lens of these two pieces, and you realize that more often than not, a scene goes not the way you planned. And it's usually someone will call red because the upregulating has happened too quickly when there actually hasn't been enough containment on the front end of things. Or there hasn't been enough attunement throughout that the containment comes back in, because it's a dance. You go up, you come back down, you go up, you come back down. So when I started to realize that in scenes, and I noticed the times where I was messing this up myself, or when I was on the receiving end of not feeling contained enough, I started to look at my facilitation. And I went, okay, well, what is facilitation about? We're trying to essentially evoke transformation. We're catalyzing something, we're alchemizing something in the space. That's upregulating. You're coming in with something where you're trying to shift energy. To shift energy, it's got to move. And so before that, have I created enough grounding, enough safety, enough holding in the space for me to then come in with, let's say, the really powerful but confronting question to my, private coaching client, or the embodiment practice in a group, in a workshop, that actually is bringing people up in the energy, but only after they've really landed in themselves and in the safety of my holding. So that became really like, I was like, oh, okay. Anytime that I have a client that comes and doesn't feel like they're bringing something and they're just kind of like wobbling, it's probably because there's somewhere that I'm wobbling. And what do I need to do now? Did I not check in with them enough? Is there not enough of a container in place? The way I started our container, where we are now, like there's so many different, there's a checklist that I'm happy we can share, we can talk about in a bit, but like, yeah, that I go through that. I go, where is something wobbly in the containment? Because until then, they're not going to respond well to my very instigating, whatever it is I'm bringing in, that penetrative energy, whether it's a question or a practice. They're going to be like, nope, I'm not available to do it. I'm clenching still. It's kind of like during sex. If there's not enough foreplay and you receive physical penetration and your body, your animal body is going to go into that clenching. It's exactly the same thing. It's like, okay, have we done all the things to ground and create that parasympathetic response where now we're available for the penetration, or is there something I missed?
Can you give something that you aren't embodied in yourself? That's the lines of which I'm going. So it's like in that moment when there's that wobble, does the facilitator need containment, or does the facilitator need to give the participant more containment? Or how do they, like, I'm just want to play with that a little bit when that's happening for you and you go through the checklist and you're like, oh, there's a wobble. I'm not fully here. Then what are you doing in yourself?
Yeah. I think that it's when you go through the experience in an actual scene, you realize, like, I've had a lot of, let's call them newer DOMs who were doing a scene with me and who wobble or who completely like do something and like hurt me, like they just spank me too hard, and I have to call yellow and be like, hey, so that was a lot. I'm wondering if maybe we could do this other thing. And so we go through that feedback moment and then they go back in. When they go back in, I've had absolutely stunning, super hot scenes after I thought, like, there's no way we're coming back from this. Like, I am so shut down. And so I think that it's really important for what I've noticed in those particular DOMs is they don't lose their confidence in the moment that they're receiving feedback. They come back to center. They take their time. Just because one thing went wrong, they don't go into a whole like mental loop of, oh my God, I messed it up. I can never, Instead, they're like, okay, I hear the feedback. They come back, they ground you as they're grounding themselves, and they start again. And sometimes you go on an amazing ride after that. And I think that resilience is so incredibly important because same thing will happen in facilitation. You have one person raise their hand, say a thing, ask a question, get triggered, give feedback, whatever it might be, that just hits that spot for you as a facilitator. And you're like, oh my God, my worst fear is happening right now in front of a whole group of people. What do I even do? I want to run. And so how do you work that same muscle of going, okay, I hear the feedback. Let me see what's relevant. What do I need to tweak? But ultimately, can I come back to this energy of, I am the one holding the space, oak tree, right? I'm here. I am the grounding pole of the space. If I wobble with the other person, the entire field wobbles. So what do I need to do to get myself back into a place of leadership and holding? And that people are very forgiving. And I think that often when someone does ask that question in a workshop, they're testing you. They might not know it, right? But they're also testing, okay, how strong is this container actually? Can this facilitator hold me or not? I get tested all the time, a lot in my one-on-one actually, where I'll have people halfway through, right when we're getting into the good stuff, right? They're just like, running away and trying to, not show up to sessions and all that stuff. And it's like, every single time I've gotten those people back into the space and we talk about it, they sign up to do more work with me, even though they're like, oh, I don't know this thing. It might not, there's all these seeming like what seems like complaints, but they're actually just them testing, okay, can she hold me in all of my tantrum? And I'm like, yeah, actually, bring it. Right. And when they can feel that, they're like, oh, okay, got it. So I think lots of times of course, the feedback content is relevant too, but it's amazing how many times people are just going, they'll show up late. Okay, is she going to say anything about it? Or, they're testing the edges of the container. And you have to go, I'm going to tighten this up a little. So I think about the somatic experience of being tied in rope. And if the rope gets a little loose, all I want is the dom to come back in and tighten it up and be like, I'm boss. Right. But they're doing it from a place of love because they just want me to relax into the somatic experience of being held by rope. They're not doing it because they're really trying to be boss. And so I think it's the same thing with coach and client or, facilitator and workshop attendees. It's okay. At what point do you have to kind of tighten the rope a little bit? Because what I have seen from a very beautifully loving, intentional place is this idea that, okay, we have to make everything so safe and so open. And so we're going to listen to everyone and everything. And what I find happens is that's when the rope loosens in the container. And then everyone starts to feel like, I feel something's a little off, but I don't know what it is. I can't really place it. And then the moment you pull the rope a little tighter, but with love to go, no, I got you. It does something to the field or the person in front of you. And I think that it's a dance. It's not an easy thing as a facilitator to know when is it time to really go wide and omega and kind of like, yeah, sure, I'm going to feel the feelings with you and empathize with every single thing you're saying. And when am I going to go, no, honey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, nope. Yeah. It's like, I love getting no's sometimes. Like it turns me on. Why? Because it's doing something to create safety in my body, actually, to go, oh, okay, this person is holding a boundary and a space and a container. And so, okay, I can actually relax into it.
So beautiful. Let's talk some more about some other of these, because this is great. I just love the translation of mistakes that facilitators make commonly and looking at them through the lens of how to work as a dominant with submissive energy. So I'd love to hear if you have some more examples that you found, either spaces that you've been in or your own space where there's common pitfalls that we can look at through this lens.
Yeah. I've made all these mistakes before. So this is, yeah.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, all of us. Right. So I think that one other thing that a lot of beginner DOMs will do, I talked about this a little bit, but this idea of control versus leadership or loving leadership, because one is all about, okay, my agenda is what matters. I'm going to go in and I want to feel this way. And I really want to try this new flogger and I want to, and I think facilitators can do the same thing. They're like, oh, I have this new framework and I'm going to bring it in and it's going to be so cool. And totally get it. Like we all get to geek out on floggers and frameworks. Like amazing. That's the name of the podcast episode. Floggers and frameworks. And so like, I get it. And I've been there. And sometimes what that does is if you come in so focused on your needs, your agenda, you're not actually slowing down enough. One, to check in, what is the group's desires or the submissive's desires? And also, what does the space need? What does the moment need? What does the field need, right? And all of these are important to be dancing with, because maybe that cool flogger started off great at the beginning of the scene. And then if you're just in it and you're not paying attention to your sub is just kind of starting to like squirm and act weird and just, I don't know. You might have to shift gears. Maybe now they need soft strokes of your flat palm, just as a way to ground. Maybe it's time for containment and down regulating. And so it's the same thing in a workshop. It's like, okay, or the space, like what actually needs to be happening right now? Maybe you brought it up and you're like, woo, everyone's yelling and getting out there, whatever. But actually they're hurting themselves at some point. And you're like, no. What they need is to come back down. So I think that's one piece.
Yeah. For me, this is speaking really to the relational attunement. It's like, how well are you listening? And that skill, I feel like I'm practicing that skill all the time relationally. And then it's also, I'm overlaying that on top of my facilitation. And now it's like, okay, I'm taking that same skill that I kind of zeroed in on in the dyadic connection, and now I'm bringing that into a bigger scope with the group field. And now in the group field, I'm like, how am I constantly attuning to now a bigger or a vaster amount of information, which is the same that I might receive from one person, but now from a group body and each of the individual bodies.
It's such a muscle to build. When I'm training facilitators in my program, like they're always like, how can I be in my experience, but also be tuning into the experience of the people in front of me? And how am I internal, but also external? It's like, yeah, exactly. It's not easy. You have 1 foot here, 1 foot here. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so same thing, you're doming in a scene, you have to be containing at all times and really paying attention to not having a single second of hesitancy ever, because your submissive will feel it no matter what, while also doing some crazy knot on the front or back of their body, or going at exactly the right angle that they asked for in like a spank or a fly. It's not easy. There's so many things you have to be doing. If it's just like, think about like juggling. If you first start juggling, you're like, oh, there's no way I can do this all at the same time. And then you learn to do it over time. It's just a skill that you learn. Yeah. I would say another one that is, that comes up a lot is assuming certain things. So for example, in a DS scene, you might have a dom who assumes a certain like firmness, or like, okay, this person, this body, this system likes it this way because the last system and body liked it that way. And so again, it goes back to attunement, but there's assumptions made instead of having systems in place for check-in. And I think that's really big when we're facilitating, is that we may have a check. Some people just don't have any check-ins, but if you might have a check-in at the beginning, but then you kind of lose yourself in the process of it, and you don't have these points where you go back in, or a system in the moment. So for example, with my clients, I will often, right up front at the beginning of any container, say that, please know that at any point, because I try to give them agency. I'm like, at any point, you can stop me, pause me, say, this is not the direction I want to go. This is right now I'm speaking specifically to my one-on-one containers, but in any situation, even in a workshop, I'm like, speak up when something is not feeling good, because I'm not always every 5 minutes going to check in with you. But if I say at the very beginning, if I create a system where they feel safe enough and there's agreements between us that they can come and speak to me in front of the group, later, wherever, on the session, like, hey, something's not feeling right, then great, I can adjust. But if you don't tell me, how do I know? attunement doesn't always work. Like we're not always psychic and picking up on every single thing.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes, so it helps us as facilitators to just tell the people, like, by the way, you have agency. Like you can come to me at any point. And so when we do that in a BDSM scene, for example, if we're doing impact play, we call out numbers so that the other person is getting instantaneous feedback on like, oh, this is a 6 out of 10. Okay. And they've asked for staying in that realm. This is how much firmness or impact I'm going to give them. Same thing with clients. I have some clients who are so sensitive and who are like, I don't want feedback this way, or I really need, like, I'll ask in the intake forms, how do you receive this, like, what do I need to know about you in terms of giving feedback? What are the ways that close you? What are the ways that open you? So that I work with your system, because everyone is different and that's beautiful, but you have to give them space to give you that feedback. Otherwise, you can't just sit there and be like, oh man, I didn't do it right. Well, it's like you didn't ask how they want it. So of course you didn't have that info. So I think there's an element there that's really important as well.
This for me is also like one way I would say this is like, what are the diagnostics? So I'm like, every practice, everything that I give the group, there's a diagnostic that I'm receiving back of like a read that they're giving me of how this landed, if it landed. And I'm like, I'm playing with that diagnostic or using that diagnostic to guide the next step or the next moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, also I think a really, really big one we have to think about is, do you really understand the agreements? Have you gone through all the different pieces, the boundaries, the desires? I think people get really focused on the fun stuff, like, okay, what things are we going to play with and what are we going to do? And it's like, okay, but at the end of all of that, when you've gone into the details, have you zoomed out to go, what is the key desire that we are trying to support here? I think same thing with a workshop, an event, a 6-month container with someone. It's like, what have they said they want that you're trying to deliver? And then within the boundaries, how can I make that happen for them? While checking in every so often, while making sure we've created a system for safety where they can pause or stop at any point that they want.
Yeah, this is like what's our shared intention, and getting really clear on our intention together. Tell me more. I want to hear another story or example of how this has shown up either in a scene or in a group or some way that they've connected for you.
Yeah. I think that, I had a scene recently where, because we were in a training space, we had appointments for scenes. So it was like, okay, an 8 o'clock, a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock. And my, let's say 8 o'clock, I was in a submissive role. My 8 o'clock dom didn't track time for me in a scene. And of course, I'm in a submissive role. So I'm not like, hopefully, if he's doing his job right, like I'm not at all. Yeah, I don't know where on earth I am. Yeah. And that part he did wonderfully. So I really had no idea where I was or what was happening. But then there was this moment, we did have a big clock in the practice room that we were in, where I just looked up and I was like, oh my God, is this saying 9:15 right now? And so I actually had to pause the scene and go, hey, can you just check time? Because am I just seeing things? And so it turned out it was true. He had lost track of time. And so, of course, it had this like domino ripple effect where then I was a horrible human for showing up to the next scene late. It was like just this domino effect and whatnot. And so, of course, like I felt pretty dropped in that experience too. And I think that time, I know this may seem a little bit more boring than the rest of this conversation, but tracking time, in addition to the tracking space, which we talked so much about, but tracking time is really a key part of helping people feel safe and holding, that loving container as well. Because people, no matter what you're doing, you want them to feel safe enough to get lost in the experience, that whatever you curated for them, you want them to be so fully present and in it that they don't have to worry about, okay, did they miss something else as a result of you going over time? And I don't know, I'm a very like time-oriented person, so I don't know if this is just my own personal pet peeve, but I do think it's like such an important piece, because I notice I start to lose trust in facilitators when there's a consistent kind of wobble in, the time tracking as well. If I'm paying for a 1-hour workshop and it starts 15 minutes late, like I don't love it. Yeah. And so I think that may seem a little bit boring, but it's part of showing up and having just everything in place in a way that the other person can go like, oh my God, they've got it. They've got it. I can just relax.
Yeah. It's part of the leadership. It's part of the leadership and the containment it's like part of everything. It's one of these foundational pillars that just like, do you have me?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Are you like, and do you have yourself really first?
Yeah.
Because if you don't like, there's also a part of that. Like if you don't even have yourself and then you're also just overly focused on me, this also isn't it. It's like, are you here? And then from that place able to hold me.
Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of brings in a whole nother layer that I'll bring in lightly, which is the importance of embodied wholeness and coming in, I think, as a leader in both your static and dynamic expression of masculine and feminine. I think that we all of us have all of these 4 different energies, and I'm not going to get too far into that one because that's a whole podcast in itself. But I think we all basically have so many different. We have these 4 quadrants of energy. And I think there's a lot of people, this misunderstanding that leadership or doming is this like more of this like dynamic, penetrative masculine energy, but it's like, it's not. It's actually about, there's the attunement and the softness. I mean, if you watch someone like a shibari scene happening in front of you, I mean, I've cried so many times at the way that a dom is just so softly moving like a little bit of hair over, someone's shoulder to just bring in it's just like, oh, divine. And so I think when we are showing up as facilitators, it's also really important that we're bringing all of these facets of our energy into the space and it's hard because it means cultivating balance and wholeness in all of these different energies inside of you. And so I think if we come in just with a focus on the penetration, again, you're setting yourself up for failure. The containment, which to me is the static masculine, is so much of is where you want to really focus your energy. But then attunement is very much about receptivity and taking in information, right? That's static feminine. Like you're pulling it like, oh, okay, I'm seeing what's happening over here. Right. And then there's moments of expression. That's the dynamic feminine. So I think that there's a way in which all of these pieces get to be woven into your unique tapestry of, your flavor of leadership. But if you are coming in kind of very with your agenda and your firmness and your toys, then it's not going to feel safe, which then, of course, ultimately doesn't drop your clients in as deep as you would like them to. And you're going, why? Why? I did all the things. No, actually, there's some things you didn't. And it's just hard to pick up on what that is without that framework.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're speaking to just speaks to the unfortunate role modeling that so many people have gotten in our cultures around what power and leadership are. And thinking that it means force and control, and how you'd think we'd all know how bad that feels and has felt and would want something different, and yet we can't help but replicate what's been passed down. And so I really love this. I love there being real kind of thoughtful, embodied ways that we can start to learn to shift those energies and come from a different place. and redefine what power and leadership actually are.
Mm-hmm. And I would suggest, even for people who may identify more vanilla and are like, no, I would never do a scene, to do something really basic where you partner up with someone and you just try out what it's like to receive different kinds of holding, like physical holding, a hug, leaning back into someone's chest or lap, and just feel, oh, what firmness is right for me? Do I feel safe giving feedback? What agreements did we have before? Like, if you just do that in a 5-minute little partner exercise, you will have a somatic imprint that will give you information. You may also then get excited and want to do more scenes, but, disclaimer there. But it could be, scenes don't always have to be in any way sexual or erotic. They can be incredibly, like I said, because it's a power play piece of it, it can be just very basic somatic, but even that imprints something in you that will help you with facilitation. So my recommendation is, everyone, if you want a little bit of homework, like go get a partner and try out what it's like to both take turns containing each other, and also pre-setting some agreements, and then also having feedback after, and see what shows up. You might, for me, it literally was me just tying up a guy twice my size and hesitating for a moment that just did something. And I was like, oh, and like everything changed.
Yeah, amazing. I would love to hear a little bit more about your personal, like you've shared that you're mostly a sub.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you're sharing, you're also sharing so much from the perspective of what makes a good dom. And I would love to just hear a little bit more about your journey and where you're at right now in this exploration and what it's teaching you, like, today.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think that I'm in an interesting point, because I always was like, yeah, I'm not interested in any kind of doming. Of course I dom and lead as a facilitator and in my life, which is part of why I like being in submission in my love life. But I have become so incredibly moved by some of the pro doms that I've seen working scenes and the beautiful results of the people that they are working with, that I have so much respect for it, and I've become a lot more interested in, I'm just geeking out on the entire thing. And so I'm definitely doming more and moving away from this idea of, oh, I'm bad at it, I don't know how to do it, blah, 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 whatever. And taking my own medicine, which is like, you have to just cultivate a muscle and a skill. And yeah, I don't know how to juggle, but if I worked on it, I'm sure I would. Right. So this is something that I'm learning to do as well. And we'll see where that takes me. I don't know.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. I can really resonate, because it's funny. I thought you naturally were more of a dom. Like, when I thought we were having this conversation, I thought you were going to talk about your experience as a dom. I didn't know that you were like more in the submissive. I'm definitely just like you, like such a dom in my professional life and my life, so much control freak that, like, it is the most delicious thing for me to just be able to really have someone that I can surrender into, and to just let that happen. Like, that's such a delight. And I've learned so much about what it takes to hold that role. And it has similarly made me more curious. Like, all of my dom inspiration comes from the people who I've been in those experiences with. So I can really, like, I'm really with you in all of it, and really curious to even unravel a little bit more of what's actually playing out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all need balance. End of the day, balance in all our archetypes, balance in all the roles we play and the energies that we embody. And when you think about it, there's a reason it's a cliche that, in New York in the dungeons, it's all the Fortune 500 CEOs. It's because it actually is, because they're doming so much in life that they need a place to let it all go and fill their cup. And I know that I feel that way as well. Being in submission is like, I'm like, oh, finally, someone's watering me, right? When I'm out there feeling like I'm doing so much of that out in the world. And so I think more and more people across the board are going to be realizing that submission is so nourishing, because we happen to be right now in the modern world, like so focused on, all of us are like conquering and dominating and, and having to lead, that we all in a way need to be in the submissive role to receive whatever nourishment we happen, which is going to be so different for each person, but for us all to receive that, which then also means the world needs more DOMs who are doing this.
Healthy DOMs.
Yes, of course. Yeah. In this entire conversation, definitely always referring to very healthy, loving, coming from a place of purely wanting to serve the submissive's desires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Is there anything else that feels important to share about tips, tools, things you've learned or are doing now to support your spaces to drop deeper?
I think as long as you walk away from this conversation remembering the containment and penetration pillars and this concept, which again, I want to credit my teacher Omar Pani for that. It's such a beautiful framework, because most of the time, if you just think about those two things and you go, what am I doing right now? And do I actually need a little bit more of the other one? That's going to change everything in facilitating, or if you're actually doming, is to just go back and go, okay, what are all the ways that I could create more of a container, more of a permission field, more of a held space? And then just checking in with the person or people you're working with. Like, how is this feeling to you? What do you need more of? Sometimes we just forget to ask.
I think a good question I have for you is, what you were sharing in the beginning, and what I'm also tracking as very true for myself, is one of the most important elements is how much I'm coming from confidence, and like I'm steady and solid in myself. Like I can really see that the room will go anywhere with me if I'm there. What are some things that have helped you get there? Or things that you do that, like, I don't know if it's a practice or an experience or a something to help increase that sense of confidence and presence and like solid, like I'm freaking here and I got you.
I mean, I'll speak to a couple of small practices that could be helpful in the moment or right before. And also I will say it's kind of life, like life prepares you. You know what I mean? It's like if enough stuff has happened and you've wobbled and fallen and gotten back up and been like, yeah, it's fine, I can do it. Like there's something about the resilience and knowing you're capable, that even when something gets like, you get a curveball in a room and you're like, whoa, that's a new one. You're like, you just have this memory in your body of, think about how many times I got like kicked and fell down and got back up and I'm here. So it's okay. I get that that's a big meta answer, but to get to the specifics too, I find one of my favorite practices is in the moment, especially if I'm already in the room or on the session and there's the wobble, is as I'm slowing down my breath, like I really obviously just draw out my breath. I do two things. One is I really, with my mind's eye and also my sensations, I kind of imagine my energy leaning back to the back half of my body and then also down into the lower half of my body. Sometimes I imagine like a tail around my booty so that, the tail, this is, I think I learned this from Casey Baker, who's like a public, or what do they call it? Like a motivational speaker, public speaking kind of coach. And it's a really great, when you have nerves, when there's any kind of energy moving through you, when you imagine there's something grounding you. So whether it's through your feet, but I like a tail because why not? Who doesn't want a tail? I imagine that excess energy discharging out of the tail back into the ground. And so this combination of imagining the energy leaning back, so my field kind of going back a little bit and down a little bit, really does something to anchor me. If you think about sitting in like a seat in a throne, right? It's like there's going to be a back and there's going to be a bottom. So there's something about that really helps me come back into the seat of my power and going, okay, I'm here and I got this. Instead of the frazzled, oh, I'm leaning forward and need to handle something, or I'm going to go up into my head and start like spiraling about what I did do or didn't do or what I should do in the future. And instead being like, done. And then I would say in general, like prepping, just do whatever embodiment practices work for you. If breathwork is your thing, do it. If Kundalini is your thing, do it. If you need to just like purr on a mat for 5-10 minutes to like a really yummy song, do it. Like hip circles, do it. Whatever you need, but come into the body and then show up. Yeah. Because a frazzled Dom, I mean, I've had that. They're like, show up and they're like, I'm late. I'm trying to untie this rope. And it's like, you're already going, I don't know how this is going to go. Right. So,
yeah.
But they could show up and be like, I'm here. I have a tangled rope. Give me 3 minutes and I'll be with you. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Different.
Very different. Same circumstance, different embodiment.
So cool. Oh, I love this. And I'm totally taking this away with me. It's beautiful and perfect and right on point with the containment and penetration in particular, and just really tightening everything up. And yeah, there's something, you've alluded to it a few times, but it's also touching me around the relationship of the care of the Dom, like that. It's so beautiful. And I think that maybe is the most misunderstood piece of DS relationships and BDSM and kink and whatever people think or project when they hear that. The care of the Dom and the love and the nurturing and the nourishment that's all in there. Like that bad sex you had when that guy, pulled your hair and shoved himself on you isn't what we're that's not the kind of domination that we're talking about. And just feeling into that and feeling into how I hold spaces and how I'm facilitating and the process I'm in. There's such a really beautiful through line or translation, or there's something there that I'm really going to take with me and inquire into a little bit more deeply.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
It's so, I get moved every time I think about it, because the good Doms, man, they are just, good facilitators, right? Like both change to rock your world.